Hi everybody. Today we're going to be talking about ratios and rates. Our learning goal for today is I can write ratios and unit rates and use rates and ratios to solve problems. So we need to know our definitions of what ratios and rates are, and we're going to talk a little bit about what they are and then a little bit about how to use them to solve problems. So first of all, what is a ratio? A ratio is just any time I have a comparison of two quantities by division. Okay, so you have to be comparing two amounts of things. And when we write ratios, here are three different ways that we can write them. We can write them using the word to, so we can say 5 to 8. We can write them using a colon and say 5, it's still read as 5 to 8 if it's a ratio. And we can also write them using a fraction bar, and again, it's still said 5 to 8 even though we're using the fraction bar. And when we write ratios, those numbers in the ratios can be representing different things. We could have them representing both part. We could be comparing part to part. For example, if I say there are 5 boys to 8 girls in a club or something like that, I'm comparing the number of boys, which is part of the whole club, to the number of girls, which is also part of the whole club, so I'm doing part to part. I can also, in a ratio, compare part to whole. So for example, if I say that 5 out of 8 dentists say that chewing Trident lowers your risk of getting cavities. Okay, I'm comparing the total number, the whole number of dentists that I surveyed, 8, and I'm comparing the part to that. So 5 out of 8. 5 is the part, 8 is the whole. You can also, when you have rates and ratios, unlike fractions, you can reverse them. So if I say 5 to 8, I can also say 8 to 5. So if 8 is my whole and 5 is my part, I can reverse those two. So out of 8 dentists, 5 say that chewing Trident reduces cavities. I've reversed those around, but it's still the same ratio. All fractions can be thought of as ratios, but not all ratios are fractions. So fractions are a subset of ratios. It's New Year's time, and so I am going to be getting ready to start training for a 5K. And so I'm using this Couch to 5K workout schedule that I found. And you can see here, the very first week, I am going to be alternating 60 seconds of jogging and 90 seconds of walking for a total of 20 minutes. So I want to think about what ratios can I write to describe what's happening here. So I noticed that I'm going to be doing 60 seconds of jogging to 90 seconds of walking. So that's one ratio that I could write from this training schedule that I'm going to be doing. One thing that we do with ratios is we sometimes want to simplify them. So I want to know what the simplified version of this ratio is. 60 seconds. I can simplify that now the same way that I would simplify a fraction. I notice that both 60 and 90 can be divided by 30. So I can divide both of these by 30. And remember, again, we're dividing by 30 over 30. So even though the ratio will look different when I'm done, it will still be equal to the same thing because I've just divided by 1. So 60 divided by 30 is 2, and 90 divided by 30 is 3. So in the simplified form now, I can see that for every 2 seconds of jogging, I'll be doing 3 seconds of walking. And see, that makes me feel better because I say, okay, I can definitely jog for 2 seconds and walk for 3 seconds. So that means I can make myself feel better about it. I should be able to jog for 60 seconds for every 90 seconds of walking. We also have rates, and a rate is a type of ratio that compares quantities measured in different units. Okay, so examples of rates would be miles per gallon. If I know that my car goes 127 miles per 4 gallons, or if I'm at the store and I see that something that's 64 ounces costs $2.99. So $2.99 per 64 ounces. And the thing that we usually do with rates is we usually try to find what's called a unit rate. And a unit rate is just a rate for 1 unit of a given quantity. So if I look back at my examples from the last one, 127 miles per 4 gallons, a lot of times, or usually, what we want to do is we want to simplify this and figure out, well, how many miles can I go per 1 gallon? That would be a unit rate. And that's how we compare the amount, the miles per gallon or the fuel efficiency for different cars. I'm not going to say, well, this one gets 127 miles per 4 gallons and this one gets 320 miles per 10 gallons. That's harder to compare than if I reduce both of those to the unit rate and say how many miles do they get per 1 gallon. And usually we don't say the per 1, we just say per gallon. Same thing for if I'm comparing prices at the store. I want to know how much, what is the cost per 1 ounce, like in the second one, not per 64, because we might have one thing that's 64 ounces, one thing that's 32 ounces, one thing that's 128 ounces. I want to know which one has the cheapest unit cost. And so that's going to be the price per ounce or the price per pound. And those are my unit rates. Okay, so let's take this example, 127 miles per 4 gallons. And let's find the unit rate for that. I want to get this per 1 gallon. So what I'm going to do is I need to divide 4 by something to make it 1. Well, if I divide 4 by 4, that would make it 1. And whatever I do to the top of a fraction, I want to do the same thing to the bottom. Same thing when I'm simplifying rates or ratios. I want to divide by the same thing. And so I'm going to divide both of these by 4, and that equals 31.75. So, if I come back here, I would write this as 31.75 miles per gallon. Or a lot of times with some of these common ones that we often find, I would write 37.75 mpg. And that's just because miles per gallon is used so often that we have abbreviated it as mpg. Or again, you can write it as 31.75 mi/g. So now I could take that information and compare it to a different car's unit rate. And I could compare the fuel efficiency of those two cars. And let's just do one more example. So let's look back at this other example, which was the $2.99 per 64 ounces. You can skip this example if you feel like you understand what we're doing, but please pause the video and try to figure out the unit rate yourself. Again, I want to make the bottom one, the bottom quantity or amount, into 1 so that I'm making a unit rate. So I would have to divide by that number in order to make it 1, and whatever I divide my bottom number by, in order to simplify, I also need to divide my top number by. I get this big long decimal here, but I'm talking about money, so really anything after the second decimal point doesn't make sense. So I would round this, and I see that there's a 6 in the thousands place, which tells me to round up. So I would have 0.05, and this is still dollars, so that's 5 cents per 1 ounce. The answer to the free response question for today is going to be television smackdown. So here are your free response and multiple choice questions.